The world loves a star. We form parasocial relationships to those on the screen as characters we can relate to. We cry when we feel that they have betrayed us, hold their successes high, and their failures even higher. It doesn't matter who it is, the famous movie star, the humble creative, the isolated author, they're all the same in the eyes of the viewer. They're icons of people's joys and their desires, bringing us something in our own less fabulous lives. Something that is so easy to prey upon. So what makes them an idol? Our everlasting adoration of them? How they'll always live on in some way in our heads, through perceived saintliness or through infamous deeds? It's hard to say, but what we tend to avoid is the constant, never thinking much about the one thing that both the famous and the detested have. How someone always gets something out of it, no matter how well-meaning the deed or heinous the crime. There's always a profit to be made, and the method to keep that relevance only gets more extreme in this modern day. It's a shame that even in the end, we still can't escape it. This is from The Clouded Eye, or Anxieties of the Modern Day. Today's tale is Pedestal. The machines whirred and beeped next to Mariette's bed. Her mother sat next to her, head buried in a book. She didn't have the strength to ask her mother what she was reading. Not that it mattered. Words had started to become hard for her when she could still talk, and each minute ticking, each disappearing faculty, was a reminder that she was a ticking time bomb, one where she ends when the timer goes off. If Mariette could say she had regrets, it's that she's going to die so young. That itself is cruel, but since she had finally made a name for herself in Hollywood, that in itself is even crueler. 25 years old. She had so much to live for, an audience who adores her, a career to be proud of, and here she was, one cancer diagnosis caught too late, and no one with the knowledge to care. Except for her mother, of course. The best care in the world only provided her some comfort in the time she had left. She was not sure if she thinks it was worth it, but better than seeing her mother cry. Mariette always hated to see her mother cry. Mariette hopes that she will be fine on her own. Her mother always seemed to be struggling in some way, only finding support from Mariette's career. She worries about what will happen to her afterwards, but no amount of wishing could change things. Not now. Unless the program Mariette had placed her trust in did what they promised to do. She wasn't exactly sure what the company was called. It was some program Mariette's mother had heard of through some director or another during one of Mariette's filmings, just after the diagnosis. The proprietor of the company came to visit shortly afterwards, a smiling man by the name of Richard Mortison. "And you were sure you could take care of everything?" Mariette's mother had asked 6 months ago. "Of course, ma'am," the man replied, flashing Mariette's mother a toothy grin. "Like I said when you first called, all you have to do is sign this contract that says we have all legal rights to do what we do, and you don't have to worry about anything. You'll be taken care of after your daughter's passing, so no need to worry about any post-death costs. We'll take care of all of that undesirable business." "And what exactly is the service you are offering?" Mariette asked, getting a look from her mother. The three of them had sat in that first meeting, in the living room of their home. Or rather, Mariette's home. Her money bought the place after all when she was 18. Her mother insisted on it. Mariette's mother always wanted her to make her own way through the world and go through every challenge head-on. So Mariette moved out after high school, buying a nice place with the money she had made from her first few films, all saved for this moment. That didn't stop her mother from visiting almost daily afterwards, then moving in a year later, after announcing that she sold their old house and she needs time to find a new place to live. Mariette was fine with it. It was always just them after her dad died. Mariette got her first acting gig when she was 12 as a child actress who stole the hearts of millions in a very successful family comedy film. One movie led to more films, TV shows, interviews. By the time Mariette was in high school, she had already won awards for her performances. And soon after graduating high school, an Oscar nomination. Not that she won it, but it was still her proudest achievement, and her mother bathed in that attention, telling everyone she could. "You hear that? My daughter was nominated for an Oscar." Mr. Mortison's grin grew. "Yes, this is all about you. I think you should know exactly what your mother did," he said. "It's really simple. You had started chemotherapy, yes, nasty stuff, but that's where we come in. My team and I, we make sure all that nasty business doesn't get out to the public. No stress on your mother for having to deal with the outcry for your sickness. No annoying questions from the press either. What we do is to make it seem like you are just entering a new stage in your career. You don't even have to worry about saying your goodbyes publicly. No retirement from the screen, so you can still finish your final filming, and we will make sure that your afterwards happens as smoothly as possible. All we require is a portion of what you make from now until you end. Fees for all the services we do, you do understand. We want your afterwards to be as less complicated as it could be. For the fans and all that." "My afterwards?" "Your death, my dear," Mr. Mortison said. "I thought you'd like a less nasty word for what's coming to you." Mariette wasn't sure she liked the man. He had a funny way of talking, and a way of saying horrible things like they're supposed to sound good. Mariette opened her mouth, but closed it when she saw her mother next to her. She was staring at Mr. Mortison, her eyes filled with hope and fear, as tears silently fell down her face. Mariette sighed. "All right," she said. "Excellent! All we need for you now is to sign this here, and we can get started." "Okay." Mariette reached for the pen, and after a moment of hesitation, signed her name on the contract. Her mother took the pen and signed her name underneath hers. Before Mariette could get a better look, Mr. Mortison snatched it up and stood up. "Lovely doing business with you both," he said. "I'll best be off, but we'll be in touch." Thank you," Mariette's mother said through her tears. Mariette said nothing, just watched Mr. Mortison go out to the door. Her mother got up and followed, speaking in the hall before she heard the door open and then close. Her mother returned to the living room. Her tears were dry, and she smiled down at Mariette. "How about dinner?" she asked. Mariette didn't get many messages from Mr. Mortison in those months that followed. She did what he said, however, and kept her sickness to herself and continued to perform. But it was getting harder. Mariette's hair began to fall out, and she finally had to shave it off. She's grateful, at least, that she finished all her scenes for her last movie. Makeup won't have to worry about finding a good wig. With little else to do, Mariette had started to think about how she wanted to spend what time she had left. Or at least she did until she got a call. A cameo slot, pre-booked for her, just a few small scenes. They could fix her up, make it look like she wasn't missing all of her hair, then she could go back to her final days. So she did it, but then another gig came up. And then another, and another. When the fourth gig offer was given to her, Mariette declined. She was tired, more often than not these days, and her days off after previous filming were spent bedridden, an attempt at a recovery she knew would never come. It was her mother who changed her mind. Mariette mentioned the gig offhandedly, voicing her surprise at their continued appearances over dinner. Mariette's mother, however, seemed really sad about it. "It would be nice to have something to look back on," she said, tearing up, "before you..." At this point, her mother left the dinner table. The next morning, Mariette called her agent, asking if that role was still available. She felt ashamed. After all, she's all her mother has. She could do a little more to ease her mother's grief, by leaving something behind to remember her with, once living daughter, an image of her smiling on stage, and the career she spent her whole too short life to build up. Even so, Mariette was tired, and she knew that her time was coming close. One day, she collapsed on the set and was rushed to the hospital, placed on a strict no more filming, no more acting order, and kept there for a week. Mariette's mother came to visit. Of course she would. She assured Mariette that everything was being taken care of. She didn't have to keep doing gigs, not while she was like this. Mariette felt relieved. Mr. Mortison showed up with her mother also, once, near the end of Mariette's hospital stay. She was ready to go home at that point. The hospital food was terrible, and she knew she'd be much more comfortable in her bed. He had brought her flowers. "I heard what happened," Mr. Mortison explained. "Very terrible, your fall, but rest assured I have everything at home set up quite nicely for you. You can rest in comfort and not worry until the end." Mariette didn't like how he said that, but her mother looked happy, so she held her tongue. But he wasn't lying. When Mariette returned home, she found her life to be the definition of comfort. She hardly had to get out of bed if she wanted to. Often her mother brought up her meals for her. A nurse came every day to check up on her and monitor any changes to Mariette's health. Later, as her condition worsened, her nurse stayed full-time. One thing about this arrangement had, and continued, to bother her. "How will I tell everyone I'm dying?" Mariette asked her mother one day. Her mother was reading Mariette a book by her bedside, the same one she read now as Mariette lay dying. "Oh, you don't need to worry about that," Mariette's mother said. "Yes, I do," Mariette replied. "Mom, I have friends, fans. I don't want to leave them in the dark with what's going on." "And worry them?" her mother asked. "Mariette, honey, the last thing you need is a crowd of people bugging you, not while you're on your deathbed. Just let us take care of it, sweetie. The only thing you should be worried about is keeping yourself relaxed and healthy for as long as possible." That sounded like something Mr. Mortison would say. Being on her deathbed is not Mariette's idea of healthy. But Mariette never had enough time to protest or negotiate a compromise. She found herself unable to walk, barely able to eat, a nurse flitting about catering to her, fulfilling her needs as her days counted lower and lower. So this morning, Mariette knew it was time. Mariette's mother finished the book just as the door to her room opened. Mariette couldn't turn her head to see who it was, but she didn't have to. Mr. Morrison walked up to her mother and whispered something in her ear. She nodded her head, her face grim. Mariette wanted to ask what they were saying, but her vision was growing blurred. "Ah, this is it," she thought. They were right at least. She was comfortable. Her vision went black. Then, for a moment, one that felt like both an eternity and no time at all, there was nothing. Then, she woke up. Mariette found herself on a strange platform, a circle, all white, plain. The world outside of this circle was dark. Mariette blinked through blurry eyes, but couldn't see through the darkness. The second thing she noticed was the smell, a bad, very strong perfume that filtered through her nose, underlaid with a faint smell that reminded Mariette of formaldehyde. She tried to take a step forward, wanted to see what was over the platform, but found that she couldn't move her limbs. The next thing Mariette realized was that there was what looked like wires running through her arms that were now pale, almost white, dead-looking. Mariette tried to move her head around and found that she could, so she looked down. There were wires around her body, now fitted with a nice dress that seemed to cling to her skeletal frame. She felt horrible, like woken up from a deep sleep, then immediately thrown into a sewer, washed up, and sent out to a party to mingle. But there was nobody there, not one she could see. But Mariette could still hear them, voices quietly murmuring in the distant darkness. She strained her eyes, but still couldn't make anyone out. "Hello," she croaked, then immediately began to cough. Her voice was ragged, like her throat was filled with water, then emptied out. "Hush now, not yet," a voice said. Mariette turned her head around, but she couldn't see who said that. "We still have a few minutes before the show starts." She recognized that voice, but where was it coming from? She looked around some more before Mariette felt the object in her ear. An earpiece? "What is happening?" Mariette asked. She tried to move her arms again to no avail. "Why, it's your debut," Mr. Mortison's voice said. "You're a star, my dear, remember? And all stars deserve to be admired." "No, this was wrong." "This isn't right," Mariette said. "I'm not supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to be dead." "And you are, legally speaking. But we can't have that, can we? Not when there's so much out of you we can get yet." "I want my mother." "I'm afraid she's not here," the man said, his voice a honeyed glee. "She had a cruise to catch after all. A nice one from the way she described it. Almost makes me wish I was there myself. Too bad she's missing out. But there's always reruns." "I don't understand," Mariette said desperately. "And you don't have to," the man replied. "In fact, you don't have to worry about anything ever again. We will take care of you for as long as we can, and in return, you will keep appearing, showing the world the star you are, and it's for everyone's benefit, you know." "I don't want this," Mariette said quietly. "I'm afraid you don't get to make that choice. Not anymore. You signed the contract. Now, you must be quiet. The show is about to start. Why don't you give us a smile? After all, It's all for the fans.